It was 12:30 at night when I finally placed the last dish on the big dining table. The smell of roasted chicken, creamy pasta, and baked potatoes filled the house. My hands were trembling, but not from tiredness, from excitement. I wanted everything to be perfect. My husband, Ryan, had invited his boss and some office friends for dinner. It was important for him. He wanted to impress his boss, and I wanted to help him shine. I had been cooking since evening. 6 hours of cutting, cooking, cleaning, and decorating, every plate placed with care. When the guests arrived, I smiled and welcomed them warmly. Everyone complimented the food's aroma and the setting. I stood near the kitchen door, watching them eat with joy in my eyes. Then, one of Ryan's friends, Michael, smiled and asked, "Ryan, did your wife cook all this? It tastes amazing." I waited for Ryan's answer, my heart glowing with pride. But then he laughed lightly and said, "Oh no, my mom made it. She's the best cook in our family." The room went silent for a second. His friends looked a bit confused, but laughed politely. And I stood there, frozen. I felt something break inside me. The smile on my face faded. I looked at Ryan, his eyes avoided mine. Why would he say that? Why couldn't he just give me that little moment of pride? I stayed quiet, serving food with a fake smile. But inside, something dark started to rise, the kind of pain that turns into anger slowly, quietly, like fire under ice. After everyone finished eating, they praised the food again. Michael said, "Ryan, your mom is amazing. This tastes professional." Ryan smiled proudly again. That was the moment I couldn't stop myself. I walked toward the table, my voice calm but cold. "I'm glad you liked the food," I said softly. Everyone turned to me. Then I looked straight into Ryan's eyes and said, "But his mom didn't make this. I did. Maybe Ryan just forgot who stands beside him every night when he dreams of success." The entire room went silent. Even the sound of forks stopped. Ryan's boss, Mr. Smith, looked at him in surprise. Ryan's face turned red. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I continued, my tone steady but full of quiet pain. "It's okay. Some men forget to give credit to their wives. They think love means hiding them behind their pride." Then I smiled politely, took off my apron, and walked to the kitchen. When I looked back, I saw everyone still silent. Ryan's friends looked uncomfortable. His boss looked disappointed. After a few minutes, Ryan followed me into the kitchen. His voice was shaky. "Why did you say that, Emma?" he whispered. I turned to him slowly and said, "I just told the truth. Is that wrong?" He sighed deeply, guilt filling his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought it would sound better if I said Mom made it." "Better for who?" I asked softly. "For your pride." He didn't answer. He just stood there ashamed. Later that night, after the guests left, he came to me and apologized again, this time in front of his mother on the phone, in front of me, and in front of himself. But that apology didn't heal what he had broken. Because that night, I realized something important. Love without respect is just a beautiful prison. And I decided, one day, I would make him see the value of the woman he took for granted. Not through shouting, not through tears, but through silence and success. That was the night when his betrayal planted the seed of my quiet revenge. The next morning, Ryan acted like nothing had happened. He came to the kitchen, kissed my cheek, and said softly, "Morning, honey, coffee." I nodded without a word. My silence confused him. He wanted to move on, pretend the night before never happened. But for me, it was unforgettable. It wasn't just about that one lie, it was about how easily he erased my efforts. When he left for work, I sat by the window, holding my cup of coffee, staring at the cold sky of Chicago. The city looked peaceful, but inside me, a storm was growing. That night showed me how invisible I had become, a woman who gave everything, yet stood in the background of her own life. I decided something had to change. From that day, I stopped asking Ryan what he wanted for dinner. I stopped waiting for him to come home. Instead, I started focusing on myself. I had always loved baking. It made me feel calm, creative, alive. So I began baking every morning, not for Ryan or his guests, but for myself. I started taking photos of my cakes and pastries, posting them online. At first, only a few people liked them. Then, one day, a small cafe near my house messaged me. They said, "Your pastries look amazing. Would you like to supply us a few every week?" My heart jumped. I hadn't felt that happy in years. I agreed. I started baking for the cafe every morning before sunrise. I worked hard, learned new recipes, experimented with flavors. Soon, people in the neighborhood started asking, "Who makes those cakes?" A few months later, my small online page called Emma's Oven began to grow. People loved my story, a simple housewife baking from home, chasing her forgotten dream. Ryan noticed my busy schedule. One evening he asked, "Why are you working so hard lately? You don't even sit with me anymore." I smiled gently and said, "Because I finally found something that doesn't make me feel small." He didn't understand at first. He thought it was just a hobby. But I knew it was the beginning of my silent revenge, not to hurt him, but to rebuild myself. As months passed, I became stronger, more confident. The cafe loved my desserts, and soon they introduced me to their business partner, a kind woman named Olivia who owned a small chain of bakeries. Olivia looked at me and said, "I see potential in you, Emma. How about you work with us? We can help expand your brand." That moment felt like the world was finally opening its arms to me. I started working with Olivia, learning everything about business and branding. I designed packaging, learned to manage orders, and spent nights creating something meaningful. Ryan noticed the change. I was smiling more, glowing more. But instead of supporting me, he became distant. Maybe he felt I was no longer under his shadow. One night, he came home late, angry. He looked at me and said, "You've changed, Emma. You don't care about this house anymore." I looked up from my laptop and said quietly, "I cared for this house more than myself once. It didn't make me happy." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You're different." "Yes," I said. "I finally met the woman I used to be before marriage, and I like her." He didn't reply. He just walked away. The distance between us grew with each passing day. But strangely, I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt free. One afternoon, Olivia called with exciting news. She said, "Emma, a food magazine wants to feature your story. They love your journey from a housewife to a baker." I froze in disbelief. Me, in a magazine. The photo shoot happened in our home kitchen, the same kitchen where Ryan had once denied my effort. Now, photographers were capturing my smile, my cakes, my story. When the article was published, people loved it. The headline read, "From heartbreak to homemade success, the story of Emma Carter." Ryan's boss saw it too. He called Ryan and said, "Hey, your wife's story is trending. You must be so proud." That night, Ryan came home silent. He placed the magazine on the table and stared at the cover, my picture, my cakes, my name. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry, Emma. You've done what I couldn't even dream of." I looked at him calmly and said, "I just did what I was always capable of. You just never saw it." He looked down, shame clouding his face. That night, I realized revenge doesn't always need shouting or breaking things. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is success, served cold and silent, like a perfect dessert. But my story didn't end there. Something even bigger was waiting for me, something that would make Ryan realize just how much he had lost, not in words, but in the silence of my success. Months turned into a year. My life had completely changed. What started as a small home bakery had now grown into a full business. Emma's Oven wasn't just a name anymore. It had become a brand loved across Chicago. People lined up outside our bakery every weekend. There was laughter, warmth, and the smell of vanilla and cinnamon in the air. But inside my heart, there was still a quiet ache, not pain, but memory. The memory of that night, when Ryan denied my worth. It didn't hurt anymore, but I could never forget how it all began. Ryan still lived with me, but our conversations had become short, polite, and distant. He wasn't cruel, just silent, like someone who knows he broke something that can't be fixed. Sometimes, he'd sit in the bakery and watch me talk to customers, his eyes full of regret. I could see it, the realization that the woman he once ignored had become someone the world admired. One afternoon, as I was preparing cupcakes for a charity event, Olivia walked in with a bright smile. She said, "Emma, you won't believe this. A television network wants to feature your story. They want to film you baking and tell the story of your journey from pain to success." I stood there frozen for a moment, my heart racing. A television network, me. When the filming day arrived, our bakery was full of lights, cameras, and people. I wore a soft blue dress, my hair tied neatly, my smile calm but strong. The interviewer asked gently, "Emma, what inspired your journey?" I paused for a second, looking into the camera. Then I smiled softly and said, "Sometimes life breaks you to rebuild you stronger. My story started with silence, but it ended with self-love." Ryan was standing in the back of the room, watching. When I finished my words, his eyes were wet. Later that night, after everyone left, Ryan came to me quietly. He looked tired, older and softer. "Emma," he said, "I watched you today. You were amazing. Everyone admires you and I." He stopped, struggling to find words. I don't know when I became the man who couldn't even say his wife's name with pride. I'm ashamed of what I did. I looked at him, not with anger but with peace. "Ryan," I said gently, "it's not about shame. It's about learning. You can't love someone if you don't respect them first." He nodded slowly. "You're right, and I didn't respect you the way you deserved." We stood in silence. The only sound was the ticking of the kitchen clock, the same kitchen where it all began. Then he said quietly, "I've been offered a promotion in New York. I'll be moving there next month. I think maybe you deserve peace more than my presence." I didn't stop him. Maybe it was time. Not because I hated him, but because I had already forgiven him. Sometimes letting go is the last act of strength a woman can show. A few months later, the TV episode aired. Millions of people watched it. Messages poured in, people thanking me for sharing my pain and turning it into power. I became a symbol of quiet strength, of dignity, of a woman who didn't scream for revenge. She baked it, sweetly and patiently. One morning, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Ryan. The handwriting was shaky. It said, "Emma, I saw your TV interview again. I'm proud of you, truly. I realize that my biggest mistake was that one night, it was every moment I made you feel small. You didn't just build a bakery. You built yourself back from ashes. I wish I had seen your worth sooner. Maybe then we could have been happy together. Ryan." I folded the letter and smiled softly. There were no tears, only calm acceptance. I walked to the kitchen, placed the letter in my recipe box, and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me who I was." That day, I created a new dessert, soft chocolate cake layered with caramel and sea salt. I named it the Midnight Dish. Because everything had started that midnight when I cooked for people who never saw me. And now, that same night had turned into the symbol of my strength. As I served the cake to my customers that evening, I looked around my bakery, full of laughter, light, and life. And I realized my revenge was complete. Not through pain, not through anger, but through becoming everything he once believed I couldn't be. The same hands that once wiped tears now built dreams. The same kitchen that once heard my silence now echoed with joy. I was no longer Ryan's wife. I was Emma Carter, the woman who turned heartbreak into hope and silence into success. The end.